With more than 20 million victims of human trafficking around the world.
You have arrested a Montrealer in connection with a human trafficking ring.
They are there because they were forced in a certain way, whether it's
human trafficking is not a business model, it is a crime, and we are going to stop.
But this nation of more than 1 billion people is also the leading offender of a much more sinister trade, global slavery.
Trafficking is really treating people as though they're indentured servants, but instilling in them fear.
But there's a bondage element to trafficking that's a little different from just prostitution. Victims of trafficking are literally housed, kept, managed by their runners or their johns, the people that keep it going.
There are trauma bonds, to the trafficker. I loved him, I really did. I really loved him, and I really thought he loved me. And so that kept me bonded to him and kept me really loyal. And, always, I really wanted to please him. I really wanted to make him happy and love me back, and that kind of stuff just keeps you in more bondage.
They are slaves, but they don't understand that. And again, they have no place to run back to.
The trafficker will say something like, I love you, you're my babe, you're my doll, but we need some money. We need some money, and I know a way that you can make money, and one of it is to have sex for money.
The soup kitchen in New London gets a lot of them in for lunch and supper. They work in New London. There was a new youngster. She was stunningly beautiful. And she had a nice tweed suit on. And she sat down, and I said, something's wrong here. So I walked over to her, and I asked her name. She gave me her name. And I said, what are you doing here? She said, this is New London, right? And I said, yes. And she said, I got kidnapped the day before yesterday when I was leaving my school. Just then, the guy breaks through the door, ran through the door, grabbed her, picked her up. They can work really quickly. And you need to be on your toes to be able to spot them. And I still feel horribly bad about her. I really do. Nobody's ever heard from her again.
I don't know if it was 18 or 19 years old, and I was in a local nightclub where I live. So it was in a normal setting. I wasn't kidnapped brutally and taken to this other place. It was a really normal experience of just being in a nightclub, hanging out with my friends. Already on that broken path of doing things I shouldn't have been doing at a young age. I was drinking, obviously underage. I think I was more like 19. I was drinking, partying, and hanging out with my friends. And I just met him, and he brought me to the bar and bought me a drink, and we exchanged phone numbers. So it was just a very normal experience, which turned into something. Obviously, I had no idea.
Generally speaking, you'll have someone who the traffickers, we call, know the vulnerabilities. And they see the kids on the streets, or they see the kids who are vulnerable, and they target them, and they begin to lure them through sometimes a short, up to days, and sometimes longer, process of making them feel like they're special, trying to build their self-esteem, trying to make them feel like they're either beautiful, they sing beautiful, they would be great as a model.
The first time we meet, he shows up in his champagne-colored Mercedes-Benz, and he has a lot of money, and he's dressed really nice, and he's good-looking, and I was automatically impressed. And so over this short time, we begin to date, and he's paying a lot of attention to me, buying me things, taking me to the mall. Everything I was missing, he was filling. And I was working at the hair salon, like I said, and I was just trying to make it like a normal 19-year-old does. And he was promising me all this stuff that I didn't have. Promising me financial gain, a family, a big home, maybe a business, my own hair salon, all these false promises that I wanted, and that's what he was luring me in with. And so I'll never forget the first time we drive down to Hartford, and it was a massage parlor in the middle of like the busy finance district, and it was in a brick building. It was set back. It had been in the community over 20 years or so. all very organized. The woman at the desk knew I was coming. And I get upstairs, I'm sent there with a duffel bag filled with condoms, high heels, a skimpy dress, and baby wipes. And I come in and automatically my name gets changed. So my identity was left at the door. You know, I didn't realize this was happening, but that's what it is. And I entered into this really dark world.
I'm Andrea Stillman. I'm the state senator of the 20th District. About 10 years ago, I decided to create a task force on Connecticut's connection, so to speak, with human trafficking. When I started down this road, we had not heard that much about it, and so most people didn't think it even existed in Connecticut.
So how big in numbers would you think human trafficking is here in Connecticut?
Now that's a good question you stumped me on. I do not know. Do you have any idea what that looks like?
Actually, we do. We talked to Bill Rivera yesterday, director of a human trafficking organization, and he said there's over 250 cases.
In Connecticut alone?
In Connecticut alone that could possibly have human trafficking involved.
Well, that's horrible to hear about. I wish we could pass some legislation that can bring an end to that or make some harsher penalties for people who are engaged in human trafficking. I think that's something we should be looking into.
And so the first time he put his hands on me, we were coming home from Connecticut on the highway, probably 2, 3 in the morning, and I was driving and I said something he didn't like. And so from the passenger seat, he backhanded me so hard, the side of my head hit the window. I actually still have a permanent lump in my skull from hitting the window so hard. And my vision became blurry, so I had to literally pull over because I couldn't see. And he just proceeded to pull me out of the car and beat me on the side of the highway, you know, in the middle of the night. And thankfully there was another pimp and his girl in the back seat who pulled him off of me, and they just threw me in the back of the car, and I just cried the whole way home to Boston, like, how did I get myself in this and how am I going to get out?
Once you get lured into it, oftentimes it's a lot more difficult to get out if you've been in it. And in some cases, the lies, the deceptions, the grooming process of the traffickers becomes dangerous because the victims often believe that even though this person is doing this to me and whatever it is that's happening to me, he loves me or they love me.
Came to my parents' house on Christmas, on Thanksgiving, you know, met my family. It was a normal boyfriend and girlfriend relationship at the beginning. And then it slowly turned into this big situation that I had no control over. And so I start to complain, start to say, I changed my mind, I don't want to do this, how can you love me and make me do this with myself? And that's when the beatings came in, and that's when it got really violent. And so at the time I'm doing that, I went to a regular call, you know, a sex buyer called me, I went to his house, but it was strange because he didn't want anything sexual from me. So he just wanted to talk. And this was odd because, you know, used to doing what you have to do and leaving. And so this, I believe, was a total, like, by the grace of God moment, because this doesn't happen to many girls in the life. Where you just meet a guy and he wants to talk to you and pay, you know, up to $900 for sitting there for like 5 hours. And he would call me back all the time. And we just developed a relationship and we talked and talked and talked. And so he became safe for me. And so statistics show that, you know, a woman in the sex industry just needs one safe, supportive person to call when she's ready to get out of the life. And so he became that safe person for me. And so I pack up the car and I move to this big apartment. And it's empty, and it's 2 bedrooms, and it's $1,200 a month. And I'm like overwhelmed. And you know, I go and try to get a normal job, but making $20,000 in 24 days to $7 an hour like wasn't working. And what do I do but call my trafficker back? Because again, the relapse and those trauma bonds and all those things that kept me connected to him is a reality.
All 55 female lawmakers, both from the Senate and the House, on both sides of the aisle, have come together to co-sponsor House Bill 5666, an act concerning the forfeiture of monies and the property derived from the human or sex trafficking.
So last year's bill, House Bill 5666, increased not only the monetary and potential jail penalties for people engaged in trafficking, but looked at our ability to seize the assets of anyone involved in trafficking. I talked earlier about removing an economic incentive in the state to do this at all, and that's a big sanction.
This girl doesn't really want to be doing this, that it's considered sex trafficking. It's not like prostitution, you know, they think it's a choice, like women decide, oh, I want to be a prostitute to make extra money. Like, no. Like, there's a story behind all that, and so to change the perspective, to change the minds, that the focus has to be on the perpetrator and the buyer. Like, that it's simple business, like supply and demand. If there wasn't such a high demand, traffickers wouldn't need so much of a supply.
Children, I can speak about children. When we started keeping track of this, when we first created our systems response, it was in 2008. And since we started tracking, we're up to about, as recently as sometime early this week, because some new reports, we're up to about 205 reports of human trafficking. Now, not every single one of those reports are confirmed victims of human trafficking, but we investigate any report of suspected human trafficking.
The work I do now is based all on advocacy and my passion to help women heal from the trauma they've been in and been through from being sexually exploited. I run a support group at a women's halfway house in Massachusetts, and this is an 8-week group geared towards women that are in recovery from substance abuse. I do trainings for law enforcement, healthcare providers, social workers, just by sharing my story and educating and raising awareness about what sex trafficking looks like in America, and just changing people's perspective on it, because I think they don't think it looks like me, or I don't know what they're expecting, but when they hear my story, their eyes are open.